Hi everyone, it's Rhiannon here and I'm back to talk to you about another book that I've been really enjoying lately. You might be able to notice that the background is a little different to my last two videos. It's because I've moved up to Edinburgh to do a master's in book history. I'm still working at Waterstones, just a different branch, and I couldn't bring all of my books with me, which is very sad, but I brought a few of my favourites. So the book I will be talking about today is slightly different to the ones I've talked about previously. Like I said in my introduction video, I do predominantly read fantasy and YA, but I do sometimes venture into 9 to 12. For those who don't live in the UK, 9 to 12 is a term used to describe books written for children who are in between the ages of 9 and 12. Obviously, the term 9 to 12 doesn't mean you have to be in between 9 and 12 to enjoy them, as is evidenced by my love for the book I'm about to talk to you about today, which is the first book in the Agatha Oddly series, The Secret Key by Lena Jones. It came out quite recently and it is so good. Hopefully it'll be the first book in a long-running series that will run for many books and many years, because I can't wait to read more of what Agatha gets up to. I think Lena Jones has a very fresh voice and a very unique take on the whole detective mystery genre. So a brief synopsis. Agatha is our 13-year-old protagonist. She lives in London with her dad, who is the gardener in Hyde Park. So they live in a house in the middle of Hyde Park, which just by itself is like the most wonderful thing I've ever heard. She's very obsessed with mysteries and detective novels, like Agatha Christie is her hero, and I knew I was gonna love Agatha because in the very first chapter she's being told off by her headmaster for sneaking around, and she just zones out and instead imagines Hercule Poirot was just standing there having a conversation with her, which is basically what I did when I was her age. So Agatha has what she calls a detective agency with her friend Liam, although they've never been hired to solve any cases. It's just sort of like an unofficial title. And they go around solving mysteries, but they've never had any real case, and you can sort of tell that Liam hasn't really got his heart into it like Agatha has. But one morning Agatha's walking to school and she sees a man on a motorbike knock over a woman in the middle of Hyde Park. And Agatha helps her and then just sort of goes about her day. And then later that evening, all of London's water just stops working. Like when they turn on the taps anywhere, just this red algae goop comes out that smells really disgusting, and it's the middle of summer, so it causes this big panic, and Agatha starts to piece together some connections between the accident she saw in the morning, and she realises that it might be connected to what's happened to London's water, so she then embarks on a mission to try and stop it. That's all I'm really going to say, because obviously it's a mystery novel, so you want to discover the mystery as you go along. The reason I think I connected with this book so much is the character of Agatha is just so beautifully portrayed. So she is kind of meant to be fulfilling the Sherlock Holmes role, where she's like a little bit rude to people but she doesn't understand why, and she sort of abandons people in the middle of talking to them to go and like pursue a lead, which, you know, feels very tired and played out when you see it in a million detective shows. But when it's a 13-year-old girl, there's like an undercurrents of naivety and innocence, and she is literally just being rude because she doesn't understand that she's being rude. And she has a really nice relationship with her dad because her mum died when she was quite young, and it was through her mum that she became obsessed with murder mysteries. She's called Agatha after Agatha Christie, and there's a really close bond her and her dad have, which is really sweet to read, where she's sort of taking care of him because he's so busy, he has to like work really long hours, so she's sort of left to fend for herself, but in a really interesting way. I think it's also quite an important book for kids to read because it does touch on the idea of friendships, because Agatha doesn't really know anyone at school, but you kind of get the sense that it might be her fault in a way because she just pigeonholes people and decides they're not worth her time. It did remind me of Harriet the Spy in the way that Agatha sort of creates this bubble around herself and assumes she knows everything about everyone, and then over the course of the book she's forced to confront her own assumptions about people in a really nice way that doesn't feel preachy. I think it works really well as a 9 to 12 book that can be enjoyed by like the young end of 9 to 12, and also obviously clearly by 22-year-olds, because it just, you get so wrapped up in the mystery. It feels like a very fun classic adventure story. I felt very protective over Agatha when I was reading it, and it's also just really fun, and the mystery is really interesting. And you know, what would you do if suddenly just out of the taps came like algae instead of water? Like, and you know, how would a city respond to a crisis like that? And I think Lena Jones does it very believably. I would recommend it mainly for people who like the Murder Most Unladylike Robin Stevens series, Maureen Johnson's books, Agatha Christie. If you're just a fan of mysteries, the central plot is very well done and it sets it up a lot for the next one, which I hope comes out soon. Thank you for watching. I hope I've maybe persuaded you to pick up a 9 to 12, and I can't wait to see what everyone thinks of Agatha.